Understanding SQL injection, a comprehensive guide to exploiting vulnerabilities. SQL injection is a type of cyber attack that targets databases through the manipulation of SQL, structured query language, queries. This technique allows attackers to gain unauthorized access to a database, extract sensitive information, modify data, and potentially compromise the entire application. In this comprehensive tutorial, we will explore the concept of SQL injection, its types, methods of prevention, and the importance of safeguarding against this prevalent threat. Chapter 1. Introduction to SQL injection. 1.1 What is SQL injection? SQL injection occurs when a malicious user inserts malicious SQL code into an application's input fields, exploiting vulnerabilities in the database layer. This code can manipulate queries and lead to unintended actions. 1.2 The anatomy of SQL queries. Understanding SQL queries is crucial to comprehending SQL injection. Queries retrieve, insert, update, or delete data in a database. They consist of keywords, clauses, and conditions that interact with the database. Chapter 2. Types of SQL injection. 2.1 Classic SQL injection. Attackers inject malicious code into input fields, which is then executed as part of SQL queries. This can expose sensitive data or even allow attackers to modify the database. 2.2 Blind SQL injection. In this method, attackers manipulate queries indirectly, often through Boolean-based or time-based techniques. Attackers infer information about the database without directly viewing the results. 2.3 Time-based blind SQL injection. Attackers introduce time delays in queries to extract information by observing the time taken for the application's response. Chapter 3. Common vulnerabilities. 3.1 Lack of input validation. Applications that fail to properly validate user inputs are susceptible to SQL injection attacks. This can occur in login forms, search bars, or any field that interacts with a database. 3.2 Poor error handling. Error messages returned by an application can inadvertently provide attackers with valuable information about the structure of the database, aiding in constructing malicious queries. Chapter 4. Exploiting SQL injection vulnerabilities. 4.1 Union-based SQL injection. Attackers exploit Union SQL statements to combine the results of multiple queries, revealing additional data. 4.2 Error-based SQL injection. Attackers use intentionally crafted inputs to provoke errors that disclose database details. 4.3 Boolean-based blind SQL injection. Attackers manipulate queries to trigger true or false conditions and infer information from the application's response. Chapter 5. Prevention and mitigation. 5.1 Input validation and parameterization. Implement strict input validation to prevent malicious inputs from entering the system. Additionally, use parameterized queries to separate data from query logic. 5.2 Web Application Firewalls, WAFs. Utilize WAFs to intercept and filter malicious requests before they reach the application, providing an extra layer of protection. 5.3 Regular security audits. Conduct routine security audits to identify vulnerabilities and ensure that your application's code is secure. Chapter 6. Importance of preventing SQL injection. 6.1 Data breaches and privacy violations. SQL injection can lead to unauthorized access, exposing sensitive data like user credentials, financial information, and personal details. 6.2 Application disruption. An attacker can manipulate queries to disrupt application functionality, leading to service outages and user frustration. 6.3 Reputational damage. A successful SQL injection attack can tarnish an organization's reputation, eroding user trust and confidence. Chapter 7. Advanced SQL injection techniques. 7.1 Out-of-band SQL injection. Attackers leverage alternative communication channels, such as DNS requests, to retrieve data from the database without relying on the application's direct response. 7.2 Second-order SQL injection. In this technique, malicious code is injected into the application, but its effects are delayed until a subsequent action triggers the execution of the injected SQL code. 7.3 Time-based blind SQL injection with advanced payloads. Attackers can refine time-based blind SQL injection by using more intricate payload constructions to extract information more effectively. Chapter 8. Impact and consequences of SQL injection. 8.1 Data leakage. SQL injection can lead to unauthorized access, exposing personal data, financial records, and sensitive company information. 8.2 Application takeover. Successful SQL injection attacks can compromise an application's functionality and even grant unauthorized access to control its behavior. 8.3 Defacement and data manipulation. Attackers may manipulate or deface a website by injecting malicious code that modifies data or alters the appearance of the site. Chapter 9. Real-world examples of SQL injection attacks. 9.1 The Sony PlayStation Network breach. In 2011, the PlayStation Network suffered a massive data breach due to a SQL injection attack, exposing millions of users' personal information. 9.2 The Heartland Payment Systems hack. Hackers targeted Heartland Payment Systems, a payment processing company, using SQL injection to access credit card data. Chapter 10. Mitigation and best practices. 10.1 Input sanitization. Ensure that all user inputs are sanitized and validated before being used in SQL queries to prevent malicious input from being executed. 10.2 Use of prepared statements. Implement prepared statements or parameterized queries, which separate user input from the SQL query structure, reducing the risk of injection. 10.3 Escaping special characters. Escape characters that could be exploited for SQL injection, such as quotes, to neutralize their potential harm. 10.4 Least privilege principle. Assign the minimum necessary database privileges to user accounts to limit the scope of damage in case of a successful attack. Chapter 11. Tools for detecting and preventing SQL injection. 11.1 SQL Map. A widely used open-source tool that automates the process of detecting and exploiting SQL injection vulnerabilities. 11.2 WAFs and IDS, IPS. Web Application Firewalls, WAFs, and Intrusion Detection, Prevention Systems, IDS, IPS, can actively monitor and filter incoming requests to detect and block SQL injection attempts. Chapter 12. Ethical implications. 12.1 Responsible disclosure. Security researchers who discover SQL injection vulnerabilities should follow responsible disclosure practices by informing the affected organization before making the issue public. 12.2 Legal considerations. While ethical hackers aim to improve security, unauthorized SQL injection attempts can potentially violate laws and regulations, so understanding the legal landscape is crucial. Bolstering the digital fortifications. SQL injection poses a critical threat to modern applications that interact with databases. By exploring advanced techniques, real-world examples, and best practices for prevention, individuals and organizations can fortify their digital landscapes against this persistent vulnerability. Staying informed about evolving attack methods, adopting the latest security tools, and fostering a culture of cyber awareness are essential to ensure that SQL injection remains a futile endeavor for malicious actors. Conclusion. Securing the digital realm against SQL injection. SQL injection remains a significant threat to applications that interact with databases. By understanding the different types of SQL injection, exploiting vulnerabilities, and implementing preventive measures, developers and security professionals can safeguard applications and databases from this critical threat. Regular security audits, proper input validation, and the adoption of best practices can collectively bolster an application's defenses and ensure that SQL injection remains a futile endeavor for malicious actors.